Hey everyone, Mike Banner here for the next episode of 62 Who Knew. We welcome you today, and before I introduce our guest, this is our first international episode of 62 Who Knew, because our guest is, in fact, the host of one of the most popular podcasts in Canada, and it is Older and Bolder. We went to the same school we want our podcast to rhyme. We have 62 Who Knew in America, and we have Older and Bolder in Canada. But before I introduce this wonderful person, I want to give that same 30, 45-second synopsis to all the new viewers that we may have, because our viewership goes up by leaps and bounds every week. What is 62 Who Knew? Why are we doing what we're doing? Well, 62 Who Knew deals with the double-edged sword of longer lifespans. You would think that that would be an 100% incredible positive thing. Oh my God, the odds are we're going to live to be 90, maybe even longer. But the truth of the matter is 98% of the country, well, let's put it the other way, 2% of this great country is financially capable of living another 30 years once they get into their 60s and having a high quality of life. And this separates my generation. I'm on the outside older edge of the baby boomer generation. Our fathers, their fathers, their fathers, they all had the same thoughts as they were approaching 62. Should we pay off our mortgage? Did we pay it off too early? Should we take Social Security, or should we defer it and keep working till a later time? Are annuities the way to go, or should we put our money into stocks and bonds? The questions are unbelievable. And our fathers, their fathers, and their fathers all had those questions. The difference is, in decades and generations past, is they had a plan to be here another 10 or 15 years, whereas our generation is planning to be here another 30, and maybe even more, with new scientific breakthroughs and medical technologies coming in the next few years, which literally dwarfs what we have seen in my lifetime the last 30 years. Longer lifespans, it's a wonderful thing, but not if we're not living a high quality of life. And that's why 62 Who Knew was invented, created, and every week brings you a different expert. And then, of course, always reminds you that our website, www.62whoknew.com, will connect you with these experts. This is not just advice we give, it is actionable advice. So if you're preparing for retirement or already in retirement, I hope as part of the 62 Who Knew family, we can help you have that high quality of life in your last segment of retirement. All right, without further ado, I would like to introduce the founder and host of Older and Bolder, Miss Debbie McCulloch, who is coming to us from Saskatchewan in our absolute favorite northern neighbors, our favorite people on the northern hemisphere, our friends from Canada. Debbie, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Mike. I'm really excited to be your first international guest.
Yes.
And I hold that title near and dear to my heart.
And you will always have it, because this is the internet. There is no one can take that away. It's done. It's out there. And in the next couple of months, in reality, we are going to be having a couple of guests from Israel. We are going to be having a guest from Australia. And as we were discussing with our producer, Anthony, the producer, before the show, I'm in heavy discussion with the Klingon Empire to bring on somebody, from Klingon. But they're very violent people. There's language barriers. You know how it is in that universe. But right now, you're our first international. So I always start this way. We're about the same age. There's no doubt I'm older. I'm older than all my guests lately. It's really a sad thing. What made you start Older and Bolder? You've been on 3 years. You've had more than 80 episodes. You literally have thousands and thousands of views, probably in the tens of thousands. But what motivated you at our point in lives to start Older and Bolder?
Well, like what your the title of your podcast, The 62 Who Knew. I retired when I was 62 back in 2018. And to start with, I, was embracing retirement. I was traveling. I dove into volunteer work. My husband and I were doing different things like that. Then the pandemic hit, which dried up volunteering. I volunteered in the long-term care facility and other places that shut us out as volunteers during that time when we had the restrictions. Travel totally dried up. And so I decided that I really wanted to do something to fill that void in my retirement years. And I tossed around the idea of launching a podcast, which was something totally out of my comfort zone because I had been
Me
a
too.
community pharmacist for 40 years. So very different, but I dove into that, started looking into it. Then I had to put the whole project on the back burner as my husband became very ill. And I thought of the topic older and bolder because I had lost way too many family members far too early. And I realized that as we get older, and especially if we get to live even just past age 50, it's really a gift that we want to embrace and appreciate and make the most of. So that was how I decided on what I was going to do. And then I decided it was going to be an interview podcast where I interview women who are fearless, fabulous, and 50 plus.
Oh my God.
And
I think
so,
that was an
yeah,
episode of Sex and the City. I'm actually almost sure that was an episode of Sex and the City. 50 Fearless and Fabulous. Look that up, Mr. Producer. Yeah,
I'm,
I'm sure of
yeah,
it.
it could have been. So, anyway, as my husband was diagnosed with bowel cancer, and of course, this project went on the back burner. And over the next couple of years, or a year plus after that, he became very, very ill and ultimately passed away
So sorry.
in the summer of 2022. Yeah, so that really rocked my world, changed everything. But as I dealt with my grief, it made me even more passionate that this was a message I wanted to get out into the world, that we need to really embrace growing older and make the most of it, and that it's a gift that so many, many people would love to have that have been denied that opportunity, including I've had a couple of sisters that passed away too early. My parents didn't live into their older years. So yeah, the more you deal with all that, the more you really realize this is a message that has to get out there. So that was my why.
And that is a great why. I've said this on many shows over the years and to friends. I don't think you really deal with loss until you lose a parent. When you're born, your grandparents are already old. And of course, when they die, you cry and you have misery. But like I said, your first memories were your oldest grandparents. It's when you lose your parents and or a spouse, but usually the parents come first, that you really know that what real loss is. That's always been my opinion. Then it always led us to that cliche, that time heals all. And I'm going to say I don't believe that. Time doesn't heal all. In fact, time doesn't heal anything. It helps us learn to live with the loss and still be happy. But healing the wound of losing your mom or your dad or your spouse, I don't know if we were ever meant for that wound to heal. I mean, we want to live with it. We want to scab over it. We want to go out and be happy and enjoy our grandchildren and our children. But I don't know about never asked anybody this, what's your personal opinion? Time heals all. I still miss my mom and dad. It's not going to heal, but now when I think of them, I smile instead of cry. That's how basically I've looked at that. I don't know how you feel about that.
I really quite agree with you. And I like the one saying that your tears of sorrow can be replaced with tears of joy as you remember the happy moments together.
Yeah.
But extreme loss of close family members, whether it's your parents or my youngest sister was brutally murdered when she was only 24, and that was an
I'm so
extreme
sorry.
loss. But I do agree with you. It doesn't heal everything because loss always changes you in a profound way, but it doesn't mean you can't be happy. So I like how you worded
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, we can be happy despite our loss.
I remember just literally a couple of weeks after my mom passed, and she went too early as well. It sounds like your mom did too. And I had custody of my then 8-year-old daughter, and mom was a tremendous help in taking Stacy to Girl Scout lessons and her horseback riding lessons. And if I couldn't pick her up from school or the dentist appointment, mom and dad were always great helps at that. And then when we lost mom and went through that week or 10 days of serious mourning, I woke up that next day, and I don't think I've ever said this on air, in the 2.5 years of 62 Who Knew, and Stacy had to go to school, and Josh had to get to karate lessons, and she had horseback riding lessons later that day, and life just goes on, which is another saying that you don't get, I think, until you lose a parent. Life goes on. I always used to think, I don't know, something, that big hole in your life, yet life goes on. But I learned that morning, life goes on. Kids had to go to school. Kids had to do their homework. I had to go write mortgages in my mortgage company. And even though one of the biggest parts of my life, my mother, was gone, life goes on. That's, I think we're getting very deep here. How did we do this?
Yeah, I don't know. But
My fault. I'm sorry. We're changing the name of the show to Suppressing and Depressing, since it has to be, But anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but we're at similar points in life. And you brought up something so incredible. So many people don't get to enjoy what we're enjoying now. We lose them early. This is a gift that has to be appreciated. Talk to me now about your favorite topics on getting older and bolder, and how we can become older and bolder with time.
Oh, okay. Great question. Well, the guests I have, there's several kind of themes or topics that seem to repeat themselves over and over. And one is resiliency. And we've kind of talked about that, whether they've had traumas or loss or other things, some adversities. None of us are immune from adversity. And so many of my guests have really shown resilience to that, either by finding a new way to look at life or just carrying on or other things. Another is pursuing passion, which and finding purpose. And that theme really resonates with so many, where they feel there might be something missing, or am I too old to try something? And then they just do it anyway and open up all kinds of doors to opportunity that they had never imagined. And I have many guests that have done that. And then another theme is really making a difference for others. And there is nothing like seeing the fruits of your labor benefit other people and going out of your way to bring joy to others that can really make a difference in our own lives. And lots of times once we are at a certain age, or maybe approaching or in retirement, we might have more time to really do that in a bigger way than what we did when we were more focused on raising our families and focused on our careers that took up so much of our time, even though we were doing that in maybe a more personal way with our families and close friends. We can expand on that in our retirement. So I think all of those things, and then what you've really touched on in your opening too, Mike, is that if we want to make the most with any of those things in our older years, we really need to think about our physical health and our financial health. And if we don't have both of those things kind of in place, it certainly can make it very difficult for us to do the things we want to do and really make the most of these older years.
It really is. The mental part of it is really quite incredible. And I think the older we get, I mean, your mental attitude affects everything you do from the time you're 3 years old and above. But I think as we get older and you make those little funny noises when you wake up in the morning because your back hurts, and there's certain physical limitations that just come with certain age your mental attitude towards things, I think is much more important than quite frankly it is in your 20s and 30s. And I think that's a very big part of the message that we both try to give to people. Now, you mentioned long-term care, and another thing we discussed on the phone earlier in the week and just before we came on air. One of the favorite things, or one of the things that I hear most commonly for the last 20 years when I'm helping with someone's mortgage or long-term care insurance or whatever I may be doing in their financial world. But, America has got some of the most expensive health care, if not the most expensive health care on the planet. There is no doubt about that. It's another thing you and I discussed. We don't get political, because if you get political on your podcast, you're going to alienate half your audience. No politics here. Although I will continue to say we love Canada, we love Canada, we love Canada. That's my one jab at what's happening. But I have always heard, or have to hear when I'm sitting with a family, I can't believe I have this collection from the hospital for $18,000 on my credit. In Canada, it's free. And I've always come back and said, I'm not an expert. I'm just not. And you have also said to me, Michael, don't make me out to be an expert on this part of it. But it's not free. There are taxes. There are other certain things in Canada. You've already disclosed to me. I'm going to disclose to our audience. This is not your level of expertise, but in your role as Older and Bolder host, what do you see as the main differences, or what are the differences between the Canadian healthcare system and the American healthcare system?
Okay, there are many differences and some similarities. We both have high standards of care and quality care. We have universal health care that covers our regular doctor visits, our hospitalizations, many other things, although it is a provincial jurisdiction, so there can be some minor differences there, but basically we go to the doctor and we don't pay up front at all. When we get hospitalized, we don't pay anything for that. How and as you say, it's included in part of our taxes. As a pharmacist, our drug costs, not when we're in the hospital, all that is covered, but our in community pharmaceutical costs are usually our own, although every province has their version of coverage. So in my province of Saskatchewan, it was based on income. So many people, the most they would pay if they qualified or with the senior plan would be $25 for a prescription, depending on what it was. But there's a list of what's covered. There'd be the odd thing that wouldn't be. Other people may pay full price depending on their income. So it's income based. There's a formula and it's based on what you made the year before and need. Actually, the formula includes how much your expenses are for any 1 month. So if you had very high expenses, then you could get coverage, but it varied. It was very individualized, but it did make it affordable for most people that all of a sudden might find themselves on a lot of very needed pharmaceuticals. However, with long-term care, it can really vary too. So someone who has high needs, their entire expenses for higher level long-term care can be totally covered. Their medications, there could be some extra expense for that because that comes from a community pharmacy but is individually paid, and again depending on a person's income. So it is I'm not the expert. That's and okay. I don't know all the finer details on that, but of course the goal is to try to stay as healthy as you can so that you don't need to have long-term care provided. And so a lot of those things for prevention of disease and staying healthy as we age are so important for everyone. And so it's important to do all the preventative measures as we age and keep up with our doctor's appointments and eat healthy and exercise and all of those things to prevent us from having to go into long-term care and to keep our brains healthy as well.
Thank you for that explanation. As I said before the show, you disclosed that's not your expertise. It's different in different providences, but you just told me and our viewers more than we probably have ever known about the Canadian healthcare system. And the idea that they tie it to your income, that touches me. That's staggering. The fact that here, if you live below the poverty line, unless you're on Medicaid, but unless you're that poor, if you make X amount of dollars, you're paying the same amount of money for your medications, your pharmaceuticals, as somebody making 3 times your money. That hurts. And America has known that for a long time, which is why for the last several decades, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, I'm not sure of the statistic, are getting their pharmaceuticals from Canadian pharmacies. That's been a trend since I was young, and it just continues to grow and grow. I don't know of any Canadians that are going, no, let's go to America and pay 3 times as much for our insulin. So tell us a little more, though, about mental and emotional awareness, the ability to try something new. It becomes harder as we want to help people more, I think, as we get older. We want to benefit others who are not blessed to have as much as we have. It's so much fun to do that. But sometimes it's harder to do that, to get out of your comfort zone as we get older. You've done it. You've done it well, obviously. What does that person in their 60s that maybe lost a spouse or God forbid, outlived one of their children, which is the worst thing in the world, how do you get up in the next morning, in your opinion? How do your guests put it, and get out of bed and start doing it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Fortunately, I have never lost a child, but I have had several guests who have. And could I just share a couple of the stories of a couple of my amazing guests who have done just that and used their grief as a springboard to do amazing things? So, one that comes to mind, this was a worldwide news story. In our province, we had a fairly elite hockey team called the Humboldt Broncos that had a horrific crash. The whole team was on their way to the neighboring town to have a hockey game, and it involved a big semi truck crossing the highway when they shouldn't have. And there were, I believe it was 13 killed, young men that were in their 18, 19, 20s, and the rest of them were severely injured. It was a horrific collision. So one of my guests, and her name is Bernadine Boulay, her son was one of the boys that was on that bus. He lived for one day and then succumbed to his injuries. But the good story that came out of that was that during the time when they realized he wasn't going to survive, he became an organ donor. And the story of him donating his organs went so far across Canada and North America and in other places in the world, and caused a huge momentum of people registering to be organ donors. And they called it the Logan Boulay effect. That was the name of the boy that died and did donate all of his organs. Since that time, and that was in, I believe it was 2018, since that time, every year on the day that he passed away, the bus crash happened on April 6th, and he passed away on April 7th, is a day called Green Shirt Day that promotes organ donation. And we're talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of more organ registrants. And it caused a movement everywhere. So she was one of my guests, and they call it the Logan Boulay effect, where now so many more people have registered to be organ donors and have literally saved lives, countless lives, and improved the quality of lives everywhere. So that was a very emotional interview that I can never forget. But her and her husband have really been ambassadors for this Green Shirt Day and for organ donation. And so April 7th, people wear green, buildings light up in green, and it promotes that cause. One other that comes to mind, and this is someone else who lost a child, and her name is Patricia Coulter. And Patricia was a school teacher and had, I think she was still working or maybe retired at the time, but her 20-some-year-old daughter was killed suddenly by a drunk driver. And in her own words, she was in a very dark place after that. She was very, struggling to deal with her grief and really didn't know what to do. But one day she remembered how her and her daughter loved to paint. So she got her watercolors out at the kitchen table and painted, and she noticed it made her feel better because it brought back memories of her and her daughter painting together at their kitchen table. And so she continued and continued. And lo and behold, she is a world-renowned artist now. She has, if anyone wants to check her out, Patricia Coulter, her paintings now sell for thousands of dollars each. And are hung in many places around the world. She has done a New York expo with her art, and she's been on many things, but it really, because it helped to deal with her own grief, she has used that to really start this, not just a hobby, but an amazing business, and using her creativity to do that.
Those two stories are so incredible and so heartwarming. I do want to say I wish we would have done this a week ago, because Logan Belay Day was only 3 days ago.
It was April 7th. Yeah.
And here's what we want to do. I mean, for sure. Put this down on your calendar, for mid-March, please, to come back on here. We'll remind us. Anthony, if you would put on your calendar too. Let's take Logan Belay Day and bring it to America next month. And see if, that. Yes, by then our viewership should be from its present thousands into the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, I hope. If not, it's our producer's fault. Certainly not mine. But yeah, if you'd like to, if his mom would like to, and if she would like to be on the show, maybe next March, even before that, but maybe we should make April 7th Logan Belay Day here in America on 62 Who Knew, and see if we could have the same effect on people here. Because that's a story that is just incredible. That's what it is.
It is. And Bernadine is a wonderful, wonderful woman, and her husband, Toby, and they have been wonderful ambassadors for organ donation. And I think that would be a wonderful thing to do next March.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's bring Logan Belay Day to America. Just what an incredible story. It is amazing sometimes how such terrible things can lead, to great things. It's that's a show in itself, the philosophical of yin versus yang, good versus evil, dark versus light. You can't have one without the other. That would be an amazingly deep show for another time. But would there be the joy of hundreds of thousands of people signing up, for Logan Belay Day? If Bernadette and Toby, did you say?
Bernadine, yeah.
Bernadine and Toby
and
didn't
Toby,
go through that
his parents.
terrible experience. Very deep. Well, let me remind everybody very quickly, time goes by so quickly, we're still fine, that you are listening to 62 Who Knew, the podcast, and we are here with the founder and host, Miss Debbie McCulloch from Saskatchewan. It took me a few times to say that earlier in the show. And her incredible podcast, Older and Bolder, that has been on now for several years, has had more than 80 episodes and is seen by thousands of people. Now, if I remember correctly, your only guests are women.
That is correct, Mike. So far.
Well, since you're our first, no pressure here, no Jewish guilt here. since you're our first international guest on 62 Who Knew, I hope when you do decide to have a man guest, I want to be the first man guest. Because one of the things that we talk about here, and I'd love to approach that with you, when it comes to retiring, when it gets to those ages of mid-60s, and mom and dad are looking in their IRAs and their 401ks, and, let's face it, this is not our parents' generation, where dad went out and made the living and mom stayed home with the kids. Half my friends, mom makes more money than dad. But yet, when you get into those mid-60s and you're getting ready to retire, you look in your 401k, and in many, many cases, dad has a lot more money in that 401k. And again, I never looked into that years ago, but I brought on a guest that brought this up and wrote a best-selling book on it. And I went, okay, tell me why. I said, it's easy. Michael, do you have any friends or any members of your family, that sometime in the last 30 or 40 years, mom or dad, not them, but their mom or dad or their mother-in-law or father-in-law got ill. They didn't have long-term care insurance. They needed help. Who was the person that stopped working and gave the help? And the truth is, 9 out of 10 times, that's mom, who helps her husband's mother or father or her own mother and father. I have one of my closest friends in life right now who's taking care of her husband's, mom, who is suffering from Alzheimer's, and she's an angel, but she also can't work and do that. So then ultimately, that problem passes one way or the other. Mom goes back to work. Everything's fine. And 20 years later, she looks in her IRA or 401k and goes, why am I a couple of $100,000 less than my husband? Well, you took 10 years off. You were the family caretaker, let alone for in-laws or your own parents, but possibly even children that maybe were having some medical or drug or alcohol issues. You're the caretaker of the family. I never even realized that until this guest brought it up. And I went, wow, I know a lot of people like that. With all of your only female guests, have any of them approached that topic of, we're the caretakers, which means sometimes we're not sucking the money away the last 30, 40 years because we take care of the family.
Yeah, even with my own personal experience, Mike, is that I wasn't a caretaker for my parents. They didn't live long enough for that. But with our own children, even though I had a very well-paying career as a pharmacist, but I was the one that chose to work fewer hours when the children were little as we were raising them, as it just naturally seemed like the fit for me. And so many in my position did the same thing. They chose to work less if they were able to, and that makes a difference down the road in your total contributions to, here in Canada we call it the Canadian Pension Plan, so it goes into that, and also our ability to contribute to registered retirement savings plans, which is very similar to what you're calling your
Right.
401k. And so in those types of things, although in Canada, back when we were saving for retirement as well, a spouse could contribute and get the tax break. They could contribute into their spouse's name to have something there, which I believe most couples did, because they could get the tax break. They were making more money and put that away into their spouse's name. And I believe that's still the case now, although I'm in the stage where I'm spending my retirement and not saving.
You're in
for
the fun
it
stage
anymore. So I can't say I'm totally up to date on that, but I believe it's probably the same way. But you're so right. It seems to be women who take a step back from their careers or the amount that they work to be the caregiver for their families. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and thankfully so, because they're the ones best equipped to do it. The other thing that, again, that the birth of 62 Who Knew came from is that statistically, men in this country, I don't know if it's changed in Canada, but the actuaries of the insurance companies in this country just recently changed. It used to be that men lived 7 years less than women. They just updated that to 5 years. Women now live 5 years longer than men. So we're catching up. But when you add in the statistic that in a married couple, a woman could be 3 to 5 years younger than her husband, again, the reality in their 80s or 90s that they could be alone for 8 to 10 years is another factor that doesn't hit you emotionally till it's almost too late. I mean, the plans are made, long-term care insurance is in place, everything is great. They've been married 50 some odd years. It's been a great life. Now dad dies, and mom, because of the age difference and just the fact that she'll be living 5 years longer, I don't know if the statistic is the same in Canada, but if it is, that means mom's alone for 8 to 10 years, maybe making financial decisions about the portfolio and the 401k and when to draw money and when not to draw money. And maybe those are decisions she's never made anymore. And we've had a couple of episodes on that, which again, I find staggering that I think I'm a fairly intelligent man, but I've never thought about that. You know, my mom went first, and that was not expected. But most moms are going to be here 8 to 10 years on this planet alone. And that's a daunting thing to think of.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I do have experience with that. I am a
Yes, you
widow
do.
now. But I also saw my mom being a widow. So back in her generation, my dad was only 57 when he passed away. And it was they had traditional roles. So my dad was the one that was in charge of all of the finances. I don't think my mom ever did so much as pay a power bill. She was she was hardworking and had her role and with us children, but the finances were really his area that he did. So she struggled with more of that. And my husband and I were married for 45 years.
God
But
bless.
just to backtrack, my mother really adopted a very good financial advisor that helped her with all of that. And myself and my brother were very close to my mom. She lived in the same town as me, and my brother was on the farm where we were raised. So she wasn't against asking for help with that. And of
Good.
course, then she learned it all pretty quickly. But a financial advisor really assisted her. For me, I was one that probably dealt with more of the finances than my husband. It was just, I was maybe a little more adept at it than him. Paperwork wasn't his thing. He was a construction worker. But there were still when he passed away, there were still many things that I think making the decisions totally on my own without checking with him or consulting with him was more difficult than you might anticipate because it's like, am I making the right decisions? So again, I really appreciate my financial advisor. And we were ones over our marriage and was my mom and dad were savers, save. They knew how to
That
stretch a
generation.
dollar. So I was
Yes.
raised in that and I felt I was pretty good at stretching a dollar myself. And so my husband and I realized how important it was to save for retirement and for other things and not to overspend. And so that was kind of the way we lived throughout our marriage. But you never know how much you're going to need. Of course, I didn't
Yeah.
expect him to pass away as soon as he did, and a lot of the other things. So there's so many decisions to make and to think about. But I really think one of the main things we all need to do is whatever our financial situation is, to live within our means and don't be afraid to ask for expert advice like you are. You're an expert in these areas, Mike. So for people to reach out to someone like you to get their perspective is really important because especially when we become a widow, we're really emotional. We have so
Yeah.
many new things happening. We're dealing with our grief. We're making decisions on our own. We're dealing with loneliness. My husband was the fix it guy around the
Of
house
course.
always. He
Yeah.
was a construction worker. I'm terrible at that. And so all those kinds of things can be a little overwhelming for me. And of course, it involves more expenses too when you're having to hire people to do those things. There's just so many changes that you maybe don't anticipate until you're right thrown into that pot of boiling water and you're dealing with it at the time as you're dealing with your own emotions. So,
Yeah, and it is such a emotional, point in life, which is, of course, no matter what, the worst point in life to make any major decision is when you're emotional. And yet, when you do lose a spouse, all of the emotional decisions are forced in front of you. Hopefully, as you do, you have family that you're close with and children. And it's just this whole getting old thing is much harder than I anticipated. There's no way to get around it. My dad kept telling me that when I was younger. It's not as easy as you expected. It's funny that you said that your parents were savers. If I had $1 for every time my dad looked at me from the time I was little till the time he left this planet and went, remember, cash is king. If I just had $1 for every time he said that, oh my God, Anthony, we'd be doing this from my yacht.
Be a millionaire.
Yeah, way past millionaire.
Exactly.
Way past millionaire. Let me remind everybody again, we are on the 62 Who Knew podcast with our guest, Debbie McCulloch from Saskatchewan, from our favorite northern neighbors in Canada, who is the founder and host of the Older and Bolder podcast. This is, we've got a few minutes left. We're still good on time. It's been an excellent show because, the 62 Who Knew podcast is the successor to the 62 Who Knew television show. So even though this is our 10th episode? 11th episode, we did have 125 episodes of the TV show. And I'd say out of the 125, we had maybe a half a dozen that were personal, that were talking about things that we all deal with. The rest were educational, and I'm proud of that. I want to be proud of that with the podcast, too. It seems like every show we have, whether I'm with the best annuity expert in North America, Tom Hegna, or the best long-term care insurance person, maybe in the country, whoever it may be, whatever our thing, we always lead back to long-term care insurance. We always lead back to annuity. In this show, which I'm very happy, even though we mentioned those things, this has been a lot more personable that we all deal with. And if you've been blessed to not deal with it yet, well, I'm happy for you, but we're all human the last time I looked, so we are going to deal with it. So I just, before we still have time left, but I really do want to thank you before I say goodbye in 10 minutes. This has been a great episode for me. It's just been a wonderful, touching episode that I think our growing audience will go, wow, he didn't bring on, the best long-term care. He didn't bring on the best annuity, the best life insurance. This week he spoke to somebody that has real problems and that is dealing with, you and I are reinventing ourselves. I'm 3 months away from my 67th birthday. And here I am building a national podcast. If you would have told me I was going to do that 10 years ago, well, the truth is I probably would have went, what's a podcast? That's probably what my answer would have been. But we have to do this as life either throws us a curve or not. You mentioned financial planners. And again, pardon my ignorance of the Canadian financial system. Here we have certified financial planners, approximately 500,000 or 600,000 of them. We have IFAs, independent financial advisors, which there are probably hundreds of thousands of those. We have registered brokers, which sell stocks, bonds. These are people with Series 2, Series 6, Series 11 licenses. What is your equivalent there when you said you had a financial planner that you trusted? Now, that's implicit. I don't care if you have $1 million in the bank or $5 million or $38.12. You need a professional to help you to get to retirement. What is your equivalent? Do they call them certified financial planners?
They might, Mike. You know what? I'm really not sure because most of them are part of either a banking institution or some financial institution. And I'm not sure the exact titles they hold, but they have a lot of credentials and education behind them and experience. So I wish I could
That's
answer
okay. No,
that
that's okay.
better, but I'm really not sure. but they are invaluable.
Yes.
So whether you are just starting off, as my children aren't just starting off, they're in their 30s and 40s now.
Mine too. Mine too.
Yeah, but or at my stage where I'm retired and want to plan the last chapter of my life. They are invaluable to give the best
Yes.
advice and information, and they can't guarantee that whatever you invest in, but to give you a
No.
diverse portfolio and make sure that you are doing other things, even in regards to things like life insurance. They look at the whole picture. They don't
Mhm.
just sell
Good.
one product
Us.
or whatever, but they really do look into what are your goals, how are you going to meet those goals, what do your finances look like now, what's possible for you, what do you want your retirement to look like. So it's with all those kinds of things, and what are your assets. So they are invaluable because they're the experts and most of
Mhm.
us aren't. And
Yeah.
so I'm really not sure exactly what they're called or
That's
what the
okay.
difference is
But
between
they're
some of
there.
them, but they're highly qualified.
Yeah, that's another thing that always, as I got more and more, I started. I'm a career mortgage person that then went into other financial parts, of the community of the industry. But let's face it, your house, no matter where you live, is usually your largest asset, and conversely, your largest liability. But it's amazing how many people, and I'm not a certified financial planner, I bring on experts. I'm very proud of my expertise in a couple of places. But you get older, you get smarter, and you learn to look in the mirror and go, I'm not an expert at that. I need an expert at that. And it's always amazed me here, and I don't know if you find it the same way there, where people are hesitant to get that financial expert. If their tooth hurts, they'll go to a dentist. If their toe hurts, they'll go to a podiatrist. Yeah, Mike, I got this money in a 401k and I'm going to convert it over. And should I do this? Should I do that? And I go, well, I'm not a certified financial planner. Let me get you someone. I mean, I don't make money on it. I'm not getting a referral fee. You're my friend. I don't know. I got this uncle, and I think he was a financial planner in 1992, and maybe I'll give him a call. And if it's a friend, I'll go, no, don't give your uncle from 1992 a call. That's not the person who knows what he's doing. Or, when somebody's going to sell a house here. I have a neighbor that's a realtor, and I really like her. Oh, is she a great realtor? Well, I don't know. Has she sold any houses in the last 12 months? I don't know, but boy, she makes a real mean potato salad when we have a block party. And this is who they give their $800,000 listing to for their house.
Mhm.
People seem to be hesitant to look for that expertise. And again, I think that gets back to the mental, emotional part of wanting to do business with a friend, which is cool. Wanting to do business with someone that you're comfortable with. But that's not always the right financial decision. It's the right person to be in your book club, to play cards with, to take a jog with, but it may not be the right person for your financial planner, your realtor, your long-term care provider, or something like that. You mentioned your children's in 30s and 40s. So am I. I have 4 grandchildren. In our closing minutes, tell me about grandchildren.
Oh, I have two adorable grandsons, aged
Okay.
10 and 8, and they are hockey fanatics. They play hockey. I get to
Go
watch them
figure.
lots. Yeah.
I'm so surprised. I think your financial planner probably plays hockey as well, but that's a different side.
Well, I
Yeah,
don't
go
think he
figure.
does right now,
He did.
but hockey is huge in Canada,
Of
as you
course. It
probably
should,
know.
yeah.
And my grandsons, they play all the time. In fact, the oldest one is going to start playing spring hockey again now, so he'll be playing right through to July. And I get the opportunity to watch them and cheer them on.
They're
And
close.
pardon
They're
me.
close to you geographically.
Yes, fairly close, an
Yeah,
hour and a bit away, but
that's fine.
we drive long distances in Saskatchewan. I go around and follow them at their hockey tournaments, which
Oh,
I love to do, and
you
they
give me
seem
the
to
chills.
love
Nothing's
having
better
me
than
there.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. And my youngest daughter is expecting her very first baby this summer. So I will
Oh,
be having another grandchild. But grandchildren do just spice up life like no one else
Yes.
does, and children are
Yes.
adorable, and they really add a lot to my world. So I
Yeah.
love that.
My oldest grandson played hockey for a while, and other than when every time he got checked into the boards, I literally went, and somebody have to go, he's okay, Poppy. That's what my grandchildren call me, Poppy. Poppy, he's okay. I go, yeah, well, that kid shouldn't have hit him that hard. It's hockey, Dad. Okay, fine. Well, that is incredible because grandchildren, one of the things that you said in the beginning that we're blessed still to be here, you and I. We got to look at that way. I have such good friends, such loving grandparents, friends. They see their grandchildren 3 or 4 times a year. If I don't see mine 3 or 4 times every couple of weeks, I go into a little bit of withdrawal. We are blessed to be able to drive. For me, it's baseball games and things such as that, that I go to every weekend or every other weekend. And that is an incredible blessing, mentally, emotionally, physically, on every level. Or to take them someplace and just give them, just spoil the hell out of them, give them everything they want and all the candy that they want, and then give them back to their mother when they're all psyched up and gotta go, Poppy's leaving, but boy, we had a good time. But that is fun to do. But I want to thank you so much for being here. I have to say this episode is so different than any other one we've done. And it's a personal episode. I think it's going to touch all of our viewers' lives. Of course, you'll be getting a link. I hope it touches your viewers' lives. I am not going to transition, but I do want to be the first man on your podcast. No pressure. But we will discuss, if you want to, because I bring so many people on my podcast to discuss this. Women do have unique problems. I won't even say problems, obstacles, hurdles to jump over in those 50s, 60s age bracket to prepare to be 70, 80, and 90. And no, I'm not an expert on it, but I've brought enough experts on it. So I want to thank you so much for being here, Debbie, being our first international guest. I want to tell everybody to look forward to next March, because I'm going to keep reminding them. We are going to have here on 62 Who Knew in about 11 months the Logan Belay Day, and we're going to make it spread from Canada to America. And you please tell or give all my love to his mom and dad for turning a tragedy into something so incredible. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week, where our guest is Miss Nancy Hetrick, the foremost expert in the nation on gray divorce, which is divorce above 50. Right now, there's a bunch of our viewers looking at each other going, don't you even think about it. But yes, that is our guest. Thank you so much, Debbie, for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a privilege and an honor, and I look forward to having you on my show when I expand to including men. And it's been a real blast, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.